The title of the sermon, The King's Way. The King's Way. What happens when you are wronged? What happens when you are wronged? Imagine you open your phone and you see it. A person you know has posted something about you online. It's not just unkind, it's a lie. They have twisted your words, attacked your character, and now your friends, your family, your co-workers, everyone can see it. What is the first thing you feel in your heart? A fire burns in your chest. Your mind races. Your fingers want to type a furious reply to expose their lie, to defend your name. You think, you will not get away with this. I will set the record straight. I have my rights. This is the way of our world. It's a world of demanding our rights. An eye for an eye, a post for a post. You protect yourself. You make sure no one takes advantage of you. This is the wisdom of the world. But today, our King, Jesus, speaks to us from the Sermon on the Mount. And his words are like water on that fire. They are shocking. They are strange to our ears. They cut against the grain of our every instinct and all the world's advice. Jesus shows us a different way to live, the way of his kingdom. It's a way that looks like weakness to the world, a way that seems foolish and passive, but in reality, it's the way of true spiritual strength, the way of divine wisdom. It's a way that turns the world's values completely upside down. As we listen to his words in Matthew chapter 5, we must understand this one great truth. It's the heart of our message today. It's the key that unlocks this difficult teaching. Because your King, Jesus, surrendered his rights to save you from God's wrath, you must surrender your right to retaliate and instead reflect his radical generosity to others. Jesus begins by talking about a law his hearers knew very well. He says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." Now, when we hear this, we think it sounds harsh and cruel. But this law, the lex talionis, a Latin phrase, it means law of retaliation or law of retribution. This law was actually a good and merciful thing. God gave this law to the judges in Israel. Exodus 21:24, Leviticus 24:20. Its purpose was to limit revenge and establish justice. Before this law was given, if someone knocked out your tooth, your anger might lead you to kill him and his whole family. This law was like a dam God built to hold back the flood of human violence. It stopped that endless cycle of retaliation. It said the punishment must fit the crime. But what did that actually look like in practice? How did this principle of proportional justice function in the life of God's people? The law of eye for an eye governed all of life. It taught that any punishment must be suited to the harm done. The punishment must align with the seriousness of the crime. That's important. If a man stole his neighbor's ox, he could not just be let go. He had to pay back 2 oxen, restoring what he stole and adding one of his own. In this, the thief lost precisely what his neighbor would have lost, and justice was served. If a man lied in court to get his neighbor condemned, the law required that the perjurer suffer the very punishment his lie was intended to inflict. For personal injury, it was the same. A life for a life, no more. A bruise for a bruise, no more. One eye for one eye, no more. One tooth for one tooth, no more. This was not a license for vengeance. It was a leash on it. It was a principle for public justice given by a just God to keep order in a sinful society. But the human heart is sinful and clever. The religious leaders in Jesus' day had twisted this law. They took a principle for judges in a courtroom and made it an excuse for personal revenge in their daily lives. They thought it gave them a divine permission slip to get even, to demand their pound of flesh. They turned a rule for public courts into a rule for their private hearts. So Jesus speaks to this broken understanding, but he does more than just correct a bad interpretation. He goes much deeper. He says, "But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil." Jesus, listen, this is very careful. Jesus is not canceling the need for police and judges. No, that's not what he's saying. He is not saying we should let criminals destroy society. No. Jesus is doing something far more profound. He is announcing that the age of the kingdom has dawned in him. The Old Testament prophets promised a day when God would give his people a new heart. The old law was a dam to hold back sin, but in the new covenant, God promised to change the river itself. He promised to take out the heart of stone and give a heart of flesh, a heart that wants to obey him from the inside out. Jesus is saying that time is now. I am here. My kingdom is here. So the way you live must change because your heart can now be changed. He is talking about your personal response when someone wrongs you. He is saying that for a citizen of his kingdom, the old way of personal get even is finished. A new way has come. It's the righteousness of the kingdom of heaven, and it flows from a new heart. To show us what this new way looks like, Jesus gives 4 pictures, 4 examples. The first is about our honor. He says, "But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also." In that culture, a slap on the face was a great insult. But a slap on the right cheek was even worse. To do this, a right-handed person, which is I am, a right-handed person, had to use the back of his hand to hit on the right cheek. It was an act of complete contempt. It was meant to shame you, to humiliate you, to say, you are nothing. The law would allow you to take this person to court and demand a large payment. Your honor required it. But what does Jesus say? He says, turn the other cheek. Let him do it again. Do not fight back. Do not sue. Do not even defend your honor. Absorb the insult. Absorb the shame. Why? Because your honor is not the most important thing. This is so hard for us. We want to defend our reputation, but Jesus calls us to a different path. It's the path he himself walked. The prophet Isaiah said the Messiah would give his back to those who strike him and his cheeks to those who pull out his beard. At his trial, soldiers spit on Jesus and slapped him, and he did not retaliate. He stood silent. He entrusted himself to God the Father, who judges justly. When you are insulted for your faith, Jesus says, follow me. Let go of your pride and trust your honor to God. Next, Jesus gives an example about our possessions. He says, and if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. A tunic was the inner shirt. A cloak was the outer coat. The cloak was very important because it was your blanket at night. The Old Testament laws say that no one could take your cloak from you, even if you owe them money. It was your right to keep it. But here, someone is suing you for your inner shirt. And Jesus said, do not just give him the shirt. Give him your protected outer coat as well. Give him more than he can legally take. I don't know about you, but this sounds crazy. Why would we do this as Christians? Jesus is using hyperbole, an extreme example to make a point. And the point is this: your possessions, your things, your legal rights to them are not what your life is about. A citizen of the kingdom of heaven holds loosely to the things of this world. We must not be people who fight and argue over every little thing. We must not let our hearts be captured by our stuff. If keeping your coat means having a bitter fight with your neighbor, Jesus says it's better to be a little cold than to have a heart full of anger and strife. He's calling us to be free from the love of money and possessions. He's calling us to trust that our true treasure is in heaven, where no one can sue us for it. Now, Jesus takes up a step further. It's getting harder and harder. He moves from not retaliating to something even more radical. He says, and if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Everyone listening to Jesus knew exactly what this meant. Judea and Galilee was occupied by Roman soldiers. A soldier had the legal right to force any Jewish person to carry his heavy pack for 1 Roman mile. They hated it. Yes, the Jews hated this. It was a constant, painful reminder that they were not free. It was an act of oppression. And the Jewish revolutionaries wanted to kill these soldiers. But Jesus says, when the Roman soldier forces you to go 1 mile, and at the end of that mile, he says, thank you, you can go now. You should say, no, let me carry it for you another mile. Can you imagine the soldier's face? He would be shocked. This is not just putting up with injustice. This is actively, freely, and generously serving your enemy. You take control of the situation not with a sword, but with surprising love. You show him that your heart is not full of hate, but full of a powerful grace. You show him that you serve a different king, and your citizenship is in a different kingdom. You do not just do what is required. You do more with a willing heart to show the love of Christ. Finally, Jesus brings all these ideas together in one general principle. And this is the heart of the matter. He says, give to the one who asks you, and from the one who would borrow from you, do not turn away. This is not a command to give foolishly to every person who wants to take advantage of you. That's not what Jesus is teaching, because the Bible teaches wisdom. But it's a command about the posture of your heart. The heart of a kingdom citizen is not a clenched fist holding tight to what is mine. It's an open hand, ready to give, ready to be generous. And the first 3 examples were about our reaction when someone tries to take from us. This last one is about our action before they even ask. It's about having a generous spirit. Now, we must pause here. A serious question comes to mind. Does this teaching mean a Christian must be a pacifist? Does this teaching mean a Christian must be a pacifist? That is, someone who believes that war and violence are unjustifiable in all circumstances. Well, let's make this practical. If someone breaks into my home and wanted to rape my wife and kidnap my children to sell for organ harvesting in somewhere in the world. Does Jesus command me to turn the other cheek and let them be hurt? How do we harmonize this command not to resist with the Bible's clear call to defend the defenseless? These are crucial questions, and the biblical answer is clear. No, this teaching does not command absolute pacifism. And no, you are not commanded to passively allow harm to your family. The reason is that Jesus' command here is about personal retaliation, not about the protection of the innocent. Listen, while it's true that God has ordained the state to bear the sword to protect the innocent and punish injustice, which may include the necessity of a just war, the Bible also consistently tells us to defend the defenseless in a personal context. So in Romans 13:4, Isaiah 1:17, and James 1:27. Very clear. So to stand by and to do nothing while an evildoer attacks your family, your neighbor, your loved one, the unborn, is not love. That's not love. It's a cowardice. It is a failure to love. Defensive action is an act of love. When a nation defends its people from an invader, it's an act of love for one's own people. It can even be an act of love for the enemy. The defender uses the minimum force necessary to stop the aggressor because it's not spiritually good for a person or a nation to live by theft and violence. Stopping a terrorist is good for everyone, including the terrorist. But what we must never do is harbor hatred. When evil is done, people demand revenge, turn their cities to rubble, bomb them. It's the only language they comprehend. And while it's true that evil must sometimes be met with force, the goal of stopping harm must never be confused with a desire to inflict it. So, what then does Jesus mean? Let his deeds interpret his words. Above all, at his trial, when the high priest interrogated him, Jesus did not resist. When charged with threatening the temple, Jesus remained silent. When Pilate questioned him, he gave no answer. He did not defend himself. At his trial, the guards spat his face and struck him with their fists. Pilate's men beat him and mocked him, and through it all, Jesus did not retaliate. His command is to stop you from seeking personal revenge, especially for your own pride or possessions, but protecting the life of another, especially the helpless, is a profound act of love. So how is this radical life possible? Flesh and blood cannot do this. My dear friends, if you try to do this in your own strength, you will fail. It's not natural. It's supernatural. The only way to live this way is to look at the cross of Jesus Christ. He is the perfect example of everything he teaches here. Did they slap his cheek? Yes, and he turned the other. Were his garments taken? Yes, they stripped him and gambled for his clothes at the foot of the cross. Was he forced to go a mile? Yes, he was forced to carry the cross, our burden, up the hill of Calvary. Did he give to those who asked? He gave everything. He gave his own life. He had all the rights of the Son of God, yet he surrendered them all. He had the right not to be spit upon, not to be beaten, not to be crucified, but he let go of his rights. Why? For you and for me. For you and for me. We stood before God as guilty criminals. The law, an eye for an eye, was against us. The just punishment for our sin was not losing a tooth, but eternal death. God's justice demanded our life for our sin, but Jesus, our champion, stepped in. On the cross, he took the full just wrath of God that we deserved. He received the ultimate injustice so that we could receive the ultimate mercy. He did not retaliate against his enemies. He prayed, Father, forgive them. He absorbed all the evil and shame and death, and he gives us all the grace and honor and life. This is the great truth that must change us. Because Christ has done this for you, you can now begin to live this way for him. Let's make this very practical. Think about your home. Your spouse says something sharp, unfair, and it wounds your pride. Your first instinct is to fire back with a list of their faults many, many years ago. But then you remember your King. You remember that on the cross, Jesus absorbed all your sin and did not say a word of accusation against you. Because he took that for you, you can now take this small sting. You can choose to absorb the hurt and not return it. You can offer a soft answer or even silence, not out of weakness, but out of the strength that comes from knowing you are totally secure and loved in Christ. Think about your work. A co-worker takes credit for your idea in a meeting. The world says, expose him. Make sure everyone knows what he did. But the King's way is different. You remember that Jesus had all glory, but he humbled himself and was shamed for you. You can choose to not fight for your own glory in that moment. You can continue to work with integrity as if you are working for the Lord himself. You can trust that God is your defender and your promoter. You can let go of the need to vindicate for yourself because your ultimate vindication is in Christ. Think about your community or even here in the church. A neighbor is unreasonable about a fence line. A brother or sister in the church misunderstands you and spreads some gossip. The desire to prove you are right is so strong But you remember your king. You remember that he was right about everything, yet he was treated as if he were wrong about everything for your sake, for my sake. Because of this, you can give up your right to be right. You can seek peace. You can go to that person with a humble heart, ready to listen and not just to argue. You can show them a generosity of spirit that confuses them, a generosity that points them to the God of all grace. So, brothers and sisters, we see the path Jesus lays out for us. It's the King's way. It begins with understanding the old law, an eye for an eye, was God's good rule for public justice. Then Jesus gives us his new radical command for our hearts. Do not resist with personal revenge. He shows us what this means. We absorb insults to our honor. We hold loosely to our possessions. We proactively serve our enemies. And we cultivate a heart of deep generosity. We learn this does not mean we cannot protect the innocent, but that our hearts must be free from vengeance. This is the way of the cross applied to our daily lives. It's impossible on your own, but when you understand what Jesus has done for you, it changes everything. When you see that he surrendered all his rights to save you, it frees you from desperately clinging to your own. When you know you are forgiven a debt you could never pay, it makes it possible to forgive the small debts others owe you. His grace transforms your heart from a stone into flesh, from a clenched fist into an open hand. So the question for you this morning, are you living by the rules of the world, always demanding your rights? Or are you learning to walk the King's way, surprising the world with a love and generosity that can only come from God? Look to your King. See what he has done for you. And then go and do likewise. Because your King, Jesus, surrendered his rights to save you from God's wrath. You must surrender your right to retaliate and instead reflect his radical generosity to others. Amen.